Hey, it's Chris, Liege Games. February, huh? February's passed. How was your February? My February was interesting. I didn't back a whole lot, so this portion of the video, just preambling there, is a little bit low. Primal the Awakening. Primal the Awakening was really the only one that really hit home for me. I went with the all-in. To be honest with you, I regretted it for about the first week after. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought about what I liked about it with the card combo system, with the AI, with the positioning that people I think are downplaying still too much as a very unique aspect. I'm actually pretty happy about it. It was obviously way more than I wanted to spend, but thankfully it was the only thing I backed in February. And I feel kind of good about that. So we'll see when it actually comes. This is another one that's going to be probably huge boxes by the time it actually gets here. Again, I think the only change I probably would have made is if you could have gotten this as a standee version for like $100 less. That would have been ideal. I can't imagine what the shipping is going to be on this though. So we'll actually end up seeing how much it's going to hurt on the other end. But like I said, I regretted it initially, but I'm actually very happy with it from that side of things. So what didn't I back? I canceled pledges for Metro Deluxe Big Box from Queen Games because I looked at the reviews and I looked at it. I have on the Underground, and so I didn't think that based on the reviews of the base game itself, as this is a redo, that this was going to be that much more appealing. And I do like the Underground a lot, and there is going to be an expansion for it, I think on Kickstarter sometime later this year. So I decided that it really wasn't worth it, even though with Queen Games you really have to almost back it on Kickstarter now just because of the price difference and the deluxeifications in terms of the expansions that are usually a better deal. Only other one that I was backing but canceled at this point was Forest of Radgost, which technically ended on the 3rd, but I'll include it here just because I looked at the competition. I think it's unique. I think the way the decks are and how the characters are going to interact on the map and do their own thing is very different, and so I give them a lot of kudos for being inventive. But ultimately, I decided for the price point and for the table space, more really table time, it wasn't going to be able to hit. So I ruled it out from that side of things, regrettably. So what am I backing now? I'm backing Block and Key. I think this is going to be good. I think I'm excited about the abstract spatial gameplay. And I think it just looks solid, and there's not any clear indication how or if it's going to be at retail. And so as an abstract game lover, I'm going to hopefully like this. And I think it's going to hold up. And this is a game that I could play with myself, with my kids, family, game group. And so I like it from all of those aspects. So the price point is pretty good too. Not as nice as I'd like after the shipping, but the initial pledge level is pretty good. I'm actually backing Tharos right now as well from Spielworks. Although I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up canceling this one by the time this video is actually launched and seen by you guys. Just because I think it's too heavy. The rules are a little bit too abstract in terms of what you're trying to do at times. And it's just a little bit too complex in that side of things for me. So I'm pretty sure I'll be canceling it shortly after I make this video. Although I like the concept. I like the idea of it. I like the artwork of it. It just is not for me. I think it's a little bit too much in that sense. Next up is Design Shogi. I am gonna take this one down to the wire. I'm really debating about what to do with this because I love the design of Shogi in the first place, but I'm not sure I want the 40 pieces that it comes with, or if I want to go with the sticker and cardboard set that might be a little bit easier. It's only $10. Because if I can do the same thing with stickers and cardboard, that might be preferable until I actually know, do I actually like Shogi and like the concept of Shogi, or do I just like the idea of Shogi in the first place and the actuality of it not nearly as much? And that's a lot of money to spend on an actuality when with something like this, there's not going to be a good secondary market if it fails to hit for me. So I'm probably going to downgrade this pledge and just kind of see what happens. I can always probably upgrade, but I'm probably going to be safer with this lower pledge level, I think. Aeon's End. Legacy of Gravehold. I'm going to be keeping this, period. Aeon's End. There will be more content to come from Aeon's End Legacy for me. Aeon's End for me for this channel. So it's one of my favorite games, probably overall, when I really sit down and think about it. The deck building aspect, the theme of it. And this, again, the price point is probably pretty good with the expansion that you're getting, as well as the promos / Kickstarter exclusives that you're getting that are usually bundled together as a small expansion or a little bit even harder to get with some of the actual exclusives. So I think as a legacy game that's adding more depth and more complexity, I think the question always is, like I said on the original video, do I want more? Do I actually need more of this game? And the answer, honestly, is no. But I love this game that much that it's probably going to stay in my collection forever. So that's why I'm looking at it. Also, I just won't pick it up at retail because I know myself, because it's going to be more expensive, and that's how I'll view it. So I like it. I like it a lot. Chamber of Wonders, again, this is probably one I'm going to go down to the wire on as well, because it is more of a worker placement, but it's got a lot of variability and modifications that you can do to the actual base game to give it a lot of variability. And it is by Ludus Magnus, which I was not a big fan of their last couple games, so that makes me a little bit more trepidatious, but the price point is a lot lower, and it seems to be a little bit more set collection, resource management-esque. And I'm more a fan of that than I am with some of the other games that they put out. So we'll see what it actually comes out as. There's an expansion that they're working on for backers as a free expansion if they hit enough goals. So we'll see if that actually happens. And we'll just kind of see what else goes on with it. But I could see myself keeping this. I could see myself easily canceling this because it's too Euro worker style placement game for me as well. Ragnarocks. Honestly, I'm thinking about keeping this one just to sort of replace the Santorini in my collection, because I think this game appeals to me more than Santorini from an overall aesthetic standpoint, a gameplay standpoint, because like I mentioned with Block and Key, I am not such a great spatial player. My wife is not a huge fan of Santorini, and so this might take a little bit of the three-dimensional spatial element out of it and make it more two-dimensional, so I'm hoping that's going to be good. Plus, as you saw with Roxley and their game previously with Santorini, the deluxe edition, the white box edition of Santorini goes now for like $100 plus on the secondary market. So it's really expensive. There's going to be some upgrades with this one that you won't see elsewhere too. I'm not a fan of the design aesthetic. Personally, I say knock the price point down $10 and get rid of this huge ugly stump of a board on the bottom. But that's the route they've chosen to go. So if I'm going to get it, I'm going to get all of that. And it's a little bit more direct, so I kind of like it. But again, this is another one I'm not completely sold on, because I'm at the point in my collection where I want to love it. If I don't love it, especially on Kickstarter, I'm going to probably try and get it later or not get it at all. Last up, I'm actually in at Root right now. I'm in at Root right now. I'm in for all the new stuff. I hate to say that because a lot of the information that I've read, the information that I've looked at, spoilers, that has talked about more of the two-player-esque. I am really looking at it as maybe a little bit of a heavier game that I can get to play with my wife, because I want to have something like that, and I think she may enjoy the tactical nature of it, especially if we have now 5 potential factions that we could do as 2 players. And honestly, the tipping point for me might be some of the hirelings, as well as maybe some of the additional like vagabonds or the other small packs that they've put out that add a little bit more depth or a little bit more intricacy rather than just the asymmetry of the factions themselves. And so that's what I like. And so this is probably going to be one that if I can pick up a copy of the base game and or one of the other expansions before this campaign ends, I'm probably going to keep this as well too. So I hate to say that because there's a couple things coming out this next coming week as well as later in the month that are going to really rack up the bills for me otherwise if I end up keeping a couple of these. So instead of tell, like what else did I get? What else did I back? What else did I buy? I thought I'd do a little bit of show and tell now, because people were wondering, okay, Chris, what's in your collection? What do you like? What have you been getting? And so I've got a couple of the games that I got most recently this past month, and I think 5 of these games I'll talk about right now. I may include a couple more depending on how long this goes and how much I blab, but this will give you a little bit more insight into me. Like, what is Chris like? What is he actually interested in? Because you've heard me say, oh, I like abstracts. Oh, I like deck builders. Oh, I don't like Euros. But, what does that mean? Like, show me instead of just mentioning 1 or 2 here. And let me show you a couple of the games, because I like to think of myself as a little bit of everything. Like, I'm into a few of these genres more, but if I can show you a little bit more of what I'm into, maybe that'll give you more insight into how I am biased in my own way. So first up, like I said, this is Crimson Company. This is the 2-player, well, up to 4-player, asymmetric, head-to-head strategic dueler that is also, I think, on Kickstarter right now for an additional expansion or 2. And I like this because, again, this is a game I think I'm going to be able to play with my wife relatively quickly, and the kids when they get a little bit older. My 7-year-old is probably almost going to be able to play this with me a little bit sooner. He's probably not going to get the nuance of the strategy, but I'm excited to play it because I think it's going to be easier to get to the table from a personnel standpoint. The one thing I'll say, and this is the first thing I'm going to talk to you guys about tonight, is a side note, is this is a big box, right? Big box. And here you go. You get to see what's in the box. You have this huge, massive board. This is a fold-out board here, folks, of massive, massive proportions. So you can see how big this thing is. Why is the box and that board that big? I got the deluxe version, which, you know, frankly speaking, again, okay, you've seen the board, right? You're expecting to see a whole bunch of stuff in here, right? Okay, here is the box. And here is the amount of cards that I got. You can see, look, this is the whole cards for this whole freaking gigantic box and one little, like, first player marker here. Why? 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 This is such a waste of resources. This is such a waste of space. Like, even if I get all the other expansions, you can fit it in, like, a quarter of size of this box. Make it a cloth map. Do what I did with my talk and get a cloth map and put it in there, and you can even make it in a rucksack. I kind of want to throw away the whole box. I kind of want to throw away the big board, to be very frank with you, and just make my own, or just play it without the board in general, just on the table, because I think it's unnecessary. And the cost point could have been significantly less, because I'm not sure why I need to have that big of a board. I'm just not. So let's contrast that for a second here. For about the same price point, for a game called JINGI that I got from one of the Japanese indie developers off of Kickstarter. This is a 2-player dueling game with just cards. And look, the box is this big. I've got the rules right there. Look, there are all my cards. That's it. There's a little map in there that you can lay things out on. Look, it's cloth even. Holy cow. So that is the side of things. But look, there's low footprint. The game, honestly, excites the heck out of me because it's a concept that I've never seen before in how you're dueling with these cards that are numbered, that you're flipping, and depending on if they're face up or face down, you can win or lose, and you have to tally the total, and it's exciting. It looks like an incredibly, incredibly solid game, and I can't wait to get it to the table. But just contrast this for a second. For about the same price point, or maybe, honestly, I think this one was even more, there's about as much content, almost, in this as there is in this. Like, which one is going to be easier to keep in my collection? Or which one can I downgrade, you know? So, I wish more publishers and designers thought about this side of things. Like, the Japanese games do a great job at this, and partially it's because they have to, because they don't have the resources to make a superfluous box like that. But it's partially because they really value space. And I'm really excited by this game. I think you should check it out if you like 2-player dueling games. So I just got this. This is completely separate from the other games that I'm going to show you because I just picked it up at retail. This is CODEX Naturalis. Again, this game is not really widely available in the US. But look, I'm just going to talk about it now because technically I got it in March. But look, the tin, it's in a tin. You know, how many games do you see in a tin? And look, this is the whole game, miniature cards. Now, I'm not a big fan of miniature cards, but I'm a big fan of how this game actually plays. So, another example of you can make it small, people. It's okay. It will still sell. Try and find this game right now. You can't. It's sold out. Anyway, but that's why size doesn't matter in these situations. Now, speaking of size not mattering, what are you holding, Chris? Yeah, the Collusion expansion from Millennium Blades. Let me show you, though, from this angle. This is a massive mother of a box. I mean, this is probably, I want to say, as big as Gloomhaven right now. And this is the Collusion expansion, which was way overdue, plus the big box to store everything in. Now, I've said I'm not a huge fan of big boxes in the past, and I'm not. But if you've ever played Millennium Blades, if you don't know what Millennium Blades is, I'm resting on this like it's a rest because it works, because it's so large. Millennium Blades is, if you think of like the trading card games or the CCGs where you're trying to constantly like open new packs and get new cards and chase the meta and that sort of thing, this is the meta version of it, because you are building decks by chasing cards, by opening packs to build your own deck in a timed construction to then go to a tournament where you fight the other people and have the ability to flip over cards and play them from your deck and win the tournament, and then you rinse and repeat and do it like a total of 3 or 4 times. And it is the most creative, one of the most unique games that I have ever played. Now, the problem is It's a little bit hard overhead rules, and it's incredibly difficult to get to the table, and the organization is a mother. It makes Marvel Legendary's organization look simple and easy. But, hence the big box is going to make a little bit better, and now I have everything for it, and I hate to say that, but I have everything for Money and Blades. And it's going to be impossible to get to the table, but I'm okay with that. Again, it's a game that's not going to leave my collection because I love the idea, I love the concept of it, I like the execution of it. Even though it's a very, 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 very niche games, level 99 games, I love you. So, that is on the opposite end of the spectrum, size-wise. If you saw, now, on one of the other videos, I was reading the rulebook for it, a little bit facetiously, but I actually have read the rulebook, and I have a copy of the new Dominant Species Marine, from GMT Games. I am never going to pre-order from them again because the shipping was like $25 on a $50 game. And that made me mad because I think Miniature Market has it for like $52 right now as a pre-order. So don't do that, even though you want to support the publisher, and I know they've done some good things in the past, but like I'm paying 50% within the US to get this shipped. I mean, this was not a $25 shipping fee on anything. If I mailed this today, I could mail it for $8. But this is my foray into something more complex, into something deep. I read the rules. I went into some of the gameplay video that was out there before it went and launched and ended up going into production. And so I was looking for something a little bit deeper. I have not had a lot of success with some of the deeper stuff I've gotten. So I'm really excited by this because it's a little bit different, because you have some elements of what you're going to be doing that are a lot different. And it looks better than Dominant Species, at least in my opinion, comparatively. Now, again, as someone who didn't play it, that's probably means nothing to anyone out there, but I like this version. This is more appealing to me than the original in the first place, so I'm excited from that aspect. And don't watch this if you love games, because I totally just tossed it and maybe hit the like, you know. Okay, two more, and we'll get through things, so bear with me. So this is Nouvelle France. So you're looking at this, and again, this is a massive box. And contrary to what I just said about space and storage, there's a reason that this abstract-based game off of a town in France is so big. And that's because the pieces, the cubes for this game are massive. Because what you're doing is you have these 3D tiles that you're placing on as the snowbanks, and you're building layers and scoring color-wise depending on what level you're on. This is not your typical game. I'm not sure if I'm going to like this. This was a gift from one of the Pay It Forward threads. But it was an abstract game I had my eyes on, so I'm going to try it out, and I think it's going to be more to my liking, but it is that spatial component that I've mentioned that I'm also not very good at. It's a strategy placement abstract game, and you can see just even on this picture right up here what you're going to be doing. You have these snow piles, and you're going to be building these cities in the winter. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be scoring depending on the spatial element, depending on which round it is. You're going to be scoring either on the first floor, the second floor, or the third floor, as well as using the colors. And you can see also the scoring track that's going to be around the outside, and these wooden blocks of various Tetris-esque shapes that you're going to be using to build in the first place. And as you can see, they actually wanted to stay really true to the faithful history of New France there. And so you can see all the stretch goals and all that. So this is basically what you're doing. You draw the construction block, you choose it, you put it down for each color that's linked in a newly placed block, so the white there for the example, move your point marker, snow drifts are calculated for each level in play, and then rinse and repeat. So, I mean, it's a spatial, abstract, building type game, so it scares me a little bit, but it also takes me outside of my comfort zone, because I think this, like I've mentioned before, is something that is worth trying to broaden my horizons with. Because you never know, also, if you're not willing to take chances on some of these games that look like this, whether or not it's going to be for you. And sometimes you don't know until you actually play. I mean, we've all been out there, and we've all been playing a bunch of games, right? And we have a good sense of what we like and what we don't like. At the same time, I think every one of us can almost look at a game or think of a game that we go, wow, if I wouldn't have tried this, I never would have knew that I liked it. I never would have even taken a chance on it. And so that's almost what this game represents. And that's why it's different than anything else in my collection, especially compared to these 5 or 6 that I'm showing you right now. You can start to see, wow, Chris, this is quite a different set of games that you've got going on. Now, speaking of things that are completely different, I went way outside my comfort zone with this, but I watched the gameplay of it, and this is Mini Express. Now, a railroad expansion game, 60 minutes, and they call it an 18XX Lite, but it's got sort of just a different vibe to it, and I don't really know how else to explain it. The price was good. They unlocked a whole bunch of stretch goals. You're getting wooden pieces. You're getting a double-sided map, the USA and the Europe side map, where you're building your trains, you're collecting your resources, you're managing it in an 18XX style. I like the aesthetic of this, and that's what initially drew me in. And I think that's the point here, is that the aesthetic can draw you in, but it's the gameplay that's going to sell you on whether or not to back it. And especially at a $39 price point, I think that was the real kicker for me, that this is a $39 bet that I'm willing to take. And if I don't like it, I don't like it, and I might get burned. But there's only 2 actions in this game, and I can play it even with my kids as the next level up beyond something like Ticket to Ride, on the Underground, or even now this. Because there's something magnetic, especially with kids, to trains. And 40 to 60 minutes cannot be understated. If you can play a game like that, I mean, you can't play Ticket to Ride hardly in 40 to 60 minutes, depending on who you're playing with. Let's be honest here, people. Like I said, you're only doing one of 2 things. You're either building tracks or buying shares. So it takes the core of 18XX and really distills it into those 2 things. You take the tokens, you build a connection, you increase the track length marker and increase your influence. Or if you're buying shares, you buy shares, decrease your reputation, and add train tokens to the available assets. I mean, that's it, apart from the end game scoring. They had a rule book out, they had some gameplay by the Game Boy Geek out here, so you can take a look at it, and it was just a nice, straightforward. Now, I looked at the mini rails too. That was too different for me, but I mean, I got it. It's small, it's compact, it's a double-sided board, it's got everything I want. And you know, honestly, with the stretch goals that they have and the price point, and I can probably make my money back just by the fact that the price point is so low. You're getting so much stuff, and this is a relatively interesting, unique game that's just a solid pedigree. It's only got a 7.7 on Board Game Geek right now, but you can see that the price range has sold from anywhere from $50 to $70 on a $39 game. So, if you want to take gameplay aside from it and just look at it from a value standpoint, would I make my money back plus a little bit if I really find that I experimented on this type of game and it's not for me? Yeah. Yep. There you go. So there is a very interesting set of games. And if that doesn't tell you a little bit about me, but also nothing about me at the same time, you're probably right. Because this is probably the most eclectic set of 5 games or so that I've gotten in a short time, back to back, with such differences in mechanics, style, theme, everything under the sun. And that's what I like talking about. That's what I like looking at. That's what this hobby brings. Like, you can stay in your corner, you can stay in your niche, you can stay in your... But the fun sometimes is going outside of your wheelhouse. Like, I have plenty of games, and I'm sure you have these as well, of games that you just like playing that you suck at. Azul. You may have heard me mention Space Base once or twice if you've been listening since towards the beginning. I am 1 in 21 with Space Base, but I think especially with the Shy Pluto expansion, the game is amazingly fun. It's not a super great game, but boy is it a lot of fun for what it offers, and I wouldn't turn it down if somebody asks to play ever. So that's about it right now for February. February actually was really low for me, but I think it was more shipping as well too. I've got a couple Kickstarters coming. I don't know if you're familiar, but Street Fighter the Miniatures game, you remember that? Did you do that at all? Jasco, Angry Joe? I'm finally supposed to be getting this later this month, and this funded in like May of 2018. It was supposed to be delivered, let's see, when? March of 2019. That doesn't sound right. May of 2018 and March of 2019. Well, March of 2019, huh? So it's only 2 years over delivery. Now, the positive thing is it looks like it's going to be a fantastic skirmish 1v1 type game, something completely different than what's out there, and it's staying relatively true to the IP itself. And I think that was part of the problem with Capcom. They had to get a lot of the stuff approved. And the miniatures apparently actually look a lot like the pictures that are actually on this. And that was the big concern, was could you actually make miniatures that are pre-painted, make them look this good, and make them, you know, get to you in one piece? And it sounds like people are getting them, and it actually is good. So the game itself has been on Tabletop Simulator, I think, for quite a long time, or Tabletop Arena, one of the two. But people are really liking it. Like, not just people from the game, previewers, but like backers that have had access to it for like the last year. Now, I will say, and this is the part that really kind of makes me irritated, is I don't know if it's Angry Joe, I don't know if it's Jasco, but they have done a horrible job at communication and shipping, especially at the end here. I say that with a lot of grace at the same time, but they purposely waited until the games were in port to send out shipping notifications to pay for shipping. And then they're saying, even after getting it, it's still like 2 weeks almost between having paid for the shipping, them turning that stuff over to the logistics, I think it's QML, and then they're going to be starting the process of getting things ready to ship. And it's not clear why. They have not been transparent whatsoever about the reasoning behind that. I can only guess, and this is where I don't want to make assumptions about judgment and things like that, but I think they were just maybe that worried about the cost of shipping. At the same time, they added essentially a month, if not more, to the delay at the end here, because they waited until literally the last moment to charge shipping. Like, did shipping change that much over the last month or two? And I don't mean shipping like overseas. I mean shipping domestically. And as far as I can tell, no, shipping has not really changed that much domestically within countries, whether it's the USA or elsewhere. So I just don't understand the reason for the delay. And I want to assume goodness, but when you give me no information to base any decision off of, like, you didn't say, hey, you know what, guys, it's just been a huge cluster. Hey, we're man-staffed down and we can't handle the logistics, and there's just been nothing. And it just kind of seems like, okay, great. And the pricing was, even for my pledge, which was not an all-in, my shipping was $47. This thing better be like bigger than Frosthaven or Gloomhaven for that level of price, because I don't even think the Bloodborne all-in for domestic shipping within the United States was that much. And that was like 2 separate boxes, I think, or maybe it was around that. So I'm not sure what is going on from that side of things. And it's left already, the way this had sort of been delayed and a lack of information for long periods within the campaign had left a bad taste in people's mouths. This just leaves an even more bad taste in their mouth. I guess the proof will be in the pudding, because I think ultimately what people remember the most is the gameplay. And they've said that they have the Mortal Kombat license, and they're going to be doing another Kickstarter for this later this year in the next couple months for the Mortal Kombat, which is going to be a crossover system too, somehow, apparently. They're going to be looking for goodwill. They're going to be looking for the hotness, the hype to get into people's hands with this. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a mixed bag. Now, I think the license alone with the pre-painted miniatures is going to do exactly what it did for this one, because this raised $2 million. But, I mean, come on, man. Do a better job logistically. Transparency is not that difficult sometimes. Type an update, give us a quick blurb, say something. That's probably the biggest complaint you get on Kickstarters in general, is like, I would rather hear like, hey guys, nothing to do, instead of like radio silence for 3 months and then a vague update about, you know, whatever going on. I'm super excited about it, actually, from the gameplay standpoint. So, you know, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. So we'll see. We'll see what it ends up doing. I think the only other thing that I have not talked about that I think I got in February was Bloodborne. Speaking of the large pledge. Now, I did not get the all-in pledge. I didn't want to spend $350 in a game that I wasn't sure from CMON whether or not it was going to be worth it. And so I skipped out on a couple of the exclusives. So I just did the basic pledge level, and I think I added a couple of the small expansions. It came with 2 expansions as well that were included, and like the Chalice Dungeon and the Blood Moon Hunter. Or no, it came with Murgo's Loft, and it came with the Chalice Dungeon, and plus all the other promo stuff. And so I opted not to get like 4 of these other expansions that were in the Full Moon All-In set for $250. I just could not justify that. So I didn't get the Castle, the Unseen Village, Bergenworth, and the Cathedral Ward. The only other one I picked up was the Hunter's Dream and the Forbidden Woods. And they're all exclusive, so I've seen them on the secondary market for a slight markup, but I think this is still a niche game. And the reviews on it are relatively good so far and staying very true to the game. The rule book I've read through is relatively straightforward. I mean, it's CMON, so the miniatures are good, so you don't worry about it from that standpoint. But Michael Chenal apparently has done a really good job designing this game, and it really is sounding like one of CMON's best in the last couple years from an actual gameplay standpoint. I know Tom Vassel's review just came out, so you can really take a look at that if you want, and he has some critiques, I think, about the resetting when you die. You have to go back to the beginning of the chapter of the campaign you're doing. So like there's 3 chapters within a campaign. You have to go back to the first one, even if you die on the 3rd one. But I mean, you can, as the commenter said, you can house rule that, or, you know, that's what Bloodborne is. So do better. And some people are going to like that. Some people aren't. But reading through the rule book, it seemed relatively intuitive. It seemed unique in the card play and how you're having to switch weapons and choose your hunters and how they're going to be interacting very carefully. And all in all, when I actually am able to get it to the table, I am going to really like it, I think. So it's going to stay in my collection. You heard me mention previously about some of these other expansions that some of them were just, you know, too grotesque for me. Not some of this stuff, but some of this other down here stuff. It was just a little bit too grotesque with some of these other monsters. And yes, it's a rated M for mature game, but some of these things are just grotesque for the sake of grotesque, and they're not even cool grotesque, you know? There's cool grotesque and there's not cool grotesque. Conversation I never thought I'd be having about the word grotesque. But you know what I'm saying. To each their own, I guess, is what it comes down to. But it's probably going to be pretty high up there on my CMON game list overall of ones that they've put out that I enjoy. Speaking of potential videos coming out in the future. So that's it. That is about it at this point for the February roundup, I hope. I'm probably sure I missed stuff that changed in my collection, or, you know, I know I got rid of a few things in a math trade, but otherwise, you know, it's going to be interesting to see. I never quite remember what's going to be coming in. I'm looking more at what's coming up at this point rather than, you know, on my list of pre-orders. Although I think Marvel United is supposed to be here in the next month too. And that might shoot near the top of my CMON games liking list as well, based on the early reviews that are out from the core pledge that has been out at retail for quite some time now. And I'm excited about that because I might also get to paint that with my son as sort of a first-time painting expedition. So there you go. Hope this was somewhat useful. I will be putting out, I think, based on the comment section, my best of February, probably as well at the end of this month, the best of March in terms of campaigns on Kickstarter. Either ones that I personally liked and backed and loved from that standpoint, or just really solid, well-run games that, okay, looking back on it, this is what you should look at. Maybe even throw in some late pledge information on there. I know there's a ton of information, and a lot of people already cover sort of the late pledge thing, but just a few notables, maybe even from that standpoint, and a few maybe that I'm even thinking about late pledging, and I'll bounce off of you guys to see what you guys think too. So I've got 1 or 2 just off the top of my head that I know I'd be interested to hear opinions on, you know, from everyone else too. So as always, you'll see the usual videos coming up later this week. Maybe I'll have another surprise or two, or maybe not. We'll see depending on time. And as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for checking it out. If you like it, great. Throw me a comment. Let me know how your month of February went as well, and anything new in your collection that I should be aware of or that should be on my radar. So thanks, guys and girls and everybody else. Thanks for watching. Stay classy out there. See you around.